And welcome into the Oklahoman's video studio. It's time for the weekend review. I'm Dave Morris, joined by my colleagues Ben Felder and Ryan Sharp. Gentlemen, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Good morning.
It is Friday, January the 18th, being produced by Paige Dillard. Back there in the control room, lots to get into from this past week. Governor Stitt inauguration, being sworn in. Mayor Holt giving his first State of the City. All sorts of action going down in Norman with the University of Oklahoma and quarterbacks, which always gets people's attention. And not a whole lot of defense being played by the Thunder these days. So we'll unwrap all those stories shortly. But first of all, as I go back to the wide shot here, Mayor Holt gave his first State of the City yesterday, and this will segue into Governor Stitt. But I asked the former state senator, Mayor Holt, if he missed being at the state capitol.
I spent a lot of time out at the Capitol this week. Inauguration ceremonies last week and this week. Do you miss being out there?
Not at all. No, I mean, no. I love this job. I love being the mayor. I served my time at the Capitol. I did my 8 years, and I wish them all the best. And it seems like there is a moment here with some optimism, and I think we should certainly encourage that and capture it. And let's hope that the state can do a better job, because it's been one of the challenges for Oklahoma City. Is the perception that the state is not doing well, and therefore maybe we're not doing well, whereas we think we are doing really well. And so I have a high level of optimism. I mentioned today, we've got some key Oklahoma City legislators now in leadership, and so we'll see. All you can ever do is be optimistic, and it's a new day at the Capitol, and let's make the best of it.
Well, Ben, you've spent a lot of time out at the Capitol. Is there optimism out there?
There is, yeah. We're kind of in this honeymoon period after the elections. Not much of a change in terms of the balance of power. Republicans still have the vast majority, a trifecta of state government with the governor's mansion, or governor's office remaining in Republican control. But there are a lot of new lawmakers coming in, this kind of idea that there may be more of a focus on solutions and kind of a moderate way of thinking, and we'll see if that turns out to be the case. It's no surprise that Mayor Holt doesn't miss his time in the legislature. The last few years would have been probably some of the toughest years in recent memory, with a lot of the budget fights. And so part of the reason why there is some optimism is that the budget picture looks to be improved. They're going to have more money on hand as opposed to having less, which has been the case the last few years. So that's going to make things easier, and has people a little bit more optimistic about 2019.
You've spent a lot of time over the past 8-9 days, various parts of the state, from Lawton, Oklahoma City, and the state capitol, of course, covering inaugural ceremonies. Governor is starting to put together his crew around him, his team, his cabinet. What is his focus as far as what you're seeing with him?
Yeah, so last week, a lot of those inaugural activities, the inauguration was last Monday, and then he is governor, and so now he's getting to work. And the big focus for him this week, he had his first cabinet meeting on Thursday. We can talk about that in a moment, but his big focus is the budget. So here in a few weeks, he'll present the executive budget, as the governor always does, kind of what he would like to see done. I got to admit, in recent years for Governor Fallon, it kind of seemed like she came out, she gave her idea, she gave her budget, the legislature paused to listen, then they went right back to working, and sometimes kind of ignored the governor's office. And so I don't think we're going to see that from Stitt this year. In fact, he has said he's going to pull in House and Senate leadership to be a part of the budgeting process before the final draft is made. That's kind of unique from what we've seen in the last few years. But yeah, his main focus has been on the budget. I've been told they're already on their third draft. They'll be meeting about that early next week. And the process is maybe a little bit more slow going, maybe for a couple of reasons. One is you have a brand new government official. Stitt's obviously never been governor, but he's never been an elected official before. So there is a learning curve there. But in talking with members of his staff, he's also asking questions about not just the appropriated dollars that the legislature and governor are responsible for, but a lot of those dedicated dollars. I mean, anywhere money is moving in state government, he wants to have an understanding. He's asking questions about why have we always done it this way. And so his staff has said that it's kind of keeping them on their toes. It's made the process a little slower, but this is a governor that really wants to be in the weeds when it comes to the budgeting process.
He had a press conference yesterday alongside Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell. He was asked, hey, you're building these new positions. Is there money for that position? So to your point of, hey, here's dedicated funds, here's other funds, he really is kind of having to look at that.
Yeah, and he said that he doesn't expect to ask for any more money when it comes to the executive budget. Is his budget for state government. There is in the governor's office budget. He doesn't expect to increase that, and I don't think that he will, at least not substantially. He can pick 15 cabinet members. He's up to 10 by my count, 10 or 11. Yeah, so he's still making those announcements. Like I said, he had his first cabinet meeting on Thursday. Thursday. What's kind of interesting about the cabinet appointments is we've talked about this before. He ran as an outsider, so every hire he makes is going to be judged. Is it an insider or an outsider? You know, and he's always said it's going to be a mix. But when you look at like the Secretary of Budget is former State Senator Mike Mazzei, and the Secretary of State, former Representative Michael Rogers. So the guys that are going to be dealing with the legislature, kind of pushing his agenda. Hey, he's tapping former lawmakers. You know, he's tapping those insiders, so to speak. But a couple new cabinet positions that are going to be really important for him. The Secretary of Agency Accountability and also his COO is John Budd, a former Sonic Corporation executive and also a worked for a restaurant consultant group. And then a Secretary of Digital Transformation and Administration.
What does that mean?
Well, I'm not exactly sure except for what it sounds like. I mean, I know he's talked about wanting to have this really customer-focused state government. And so he wants some of his team, and I think this is a position that will be included in this, that really is kind of, you know, reassessing how do we, our point of contact with our customers, with citizens. You know, do we need to improve our technology and, you know, have more app-based services? Is there ways we can, you know, be more efficient with state government? You know, his tap for that position, a new cabinet position, is David Ostro, who is the owner of this large restaurant group and is kind of known for kind of transforming restaurant chains. So he's tapping two people from the hospitality sector to kind of come and lead his drive for state agency reform when it comes to efficiency and a more customer-focused mission. And you know, the one thing I think about when I think about, you know, fast food restaurants, which both these people are coming from, is you know, it doesn't seem like much has changed in the way of fast food companies. I mean, you know, you go through the drive-through, you go to the counter, you get your food. But you never ever step back behind the scenes at like a McDonald's in recent years. I mean, there's a lot of technology and you know, restaurants like Sonic and Burger King and Taco Bell, they really rely on metrics and data, and not just on where they set up shop, but how you know, their customer flow and stuff like that. So it's interesting that he's picked two people from that sector who kind of come in, I think, not so much with the mindset of flipping burgers, but counting those burgers and, you know, how many to make and at what times a day and that kind of thing. So Stitt has said that he's going to be very metric oriented, and I think, you know, the people he's picking seem to be coming from that mold.
Good stuff. We'll get into your weekend coverage here in a little bit. State of the State coming up in February 4th, I believe, and that's perhaps when we'll hear a little more policy from Governor Stitt. Big news down in Norman this week on a couple fronts. Austin Kendall, I don't want to steal your thunder, was leaving, wasn't leaving. Today he's officially committed or at West Virginia, I guess. And in the meantime, a quarterback from Alabama comes in.
Yeah, it was a crazy Wednesday. Within about an hour, we find out about Austin Kendall, who had put his name into the transfer portal, which is this mythical NCAA thing that we know is out there. We don't know who's on it. We don't know how to get onto it, but it's there.
How long has the portal been around?
A couple of years.
It's suddenly the jargon these days.
It is. It's new. It's been around for a few years, but essentially any Division I, Division II, Division III, any kind of athlete that wants to move from their current institution can put their name into this portal. And we've been told that it's fairly rudimentary. It's not super high tech. It's just a list of names and where they're at, maybe a position that they play, some information. There's not much information. Yeah, essentially. There's not a whole lot of information as far as what they've accomplished or anything like that, but it's a searchable database that college coaches can go look at and start looking for players. There have been several guys from OU and OSU that have put their names on this portal. But this week it was all about OU. We found out that Austin Kendall, who had spent the last 2 or 3 years backing up guys, he was kind of unlucky in the time that he came, because his first year on campus was the year that Baker Mayfield got the extra year of eligibility from the Big 12. So he's going to obviously sit behind Baker Mayfield. The next year, he comes in and competes for the spring job against Kyler Murray. We're told at the end of spring football that it's a close race between him and Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray goes out and wins the Heisman Trophy. And then this year there was some, once Kyler Murray declared for the NFL draft, we heard all kinds of guys that were out there that OU was looking at that were a part of this transfer portal, including a guy from Georgia. Jalen Hurts' name came up several times. And so then all of a sudden Austin Kendall's like, I don't want to sit here and stare from the sidelines again, and so he puts his name in the portal. The only trick with that is the places that he wanted to go. Originally, he was looking at West Virginia and Tennessee, both of whom OU plays within the next couple of years. So if you're Lincoln Riley, you're not super fired up about a guy that's been in your program for 3 years going and playing a school that you're going to have to play either 1 or 2 times while he's still there. And so originally, Riley denies the transfer or denies the immediate eligibility for Austin Kendall to go to one of those 2 schools. And we're working on that on Wednesday morning. We're solely focused on that, and then all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts from Alabama posts on the Players Tribune that he is leaving Alabama and enrolling at OU. And so then all our focus kind of shifts to Jalen Hurts, and we start thinking about Austin Kendall, and you kind of start thinking, okay, well now maybe they're going to turn him loose, and eventually that's what they ended up doing. And then we found out this morning that he is indeed enrolled at West Virginia and will play for the Mountaineers next year.
Lots of coverage of this, of course, from the Oklahoman. You can find online at newsok.com. Our Ryan Aber collaborated with our colleagues out in Alabama at the Tuscaloosa News with Taryn Wack.
Like even after, before he lost the starting job, and then afterward, he's like, I plan on graduating at Alabama. I'm not going to leave like this team in the middle of the season. Like, I want my degree from here. I'm going to finish what I started. And even though he flat out said that, people are like, oh, where's he going to transfer? Is he going to use his red shirt? Yada, yada. But I really respected the fact that he did stick to what he said. It's not like he said one thing, did another. And he's been that way throughout the whole process. I think he kept what he needed to private, and I think he revealed what was necessary. It just, some people took it different ways.
So we appreciate Taryn Wack joining us there from the Tuscaloosa News. And Ryan, she's talking about Jalen Hurts, and what do we know about this guy?
26-2 as a starter for Alabama. The problem was the 2, and when those came. He starts the championship game a couple years ago, does not play very well in the first half. They come back out in the second half, and all of a sudden they've got this new guy that plays quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, who lights it up, and they end up winning. So coming into this season, it was a really big question of which one of those 2 guys was going to play. So going through spring camp and then again in the fall, ends up that Tua gets the starting job. Jalen Hurts plays the part of good soldier, says all the right things, does all the right things, has to step in a couple times and win games for them. The big one being the SEC championship game against Georgia. Tagovailoa gets hurt. Again, another poor offensive performance in the first half. Jalen Hurts comes in, leads them to a SEC title. And so he's done all the right things, said all the right things. Barry Trammell wrote a fantastic column about OU getting a ready-made leader in this guy that we've seen everything that we need to see as far as his, off the field and his personality and his leadership abilities. The interesting thing now is how he fits in with Lincoln Riley's offense.
I think it'll be interesting if we'll ever get any comments out of him of the different coaching styles, Nick Saban and Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, you've got 2 guys that could not be any more different. Now, by all accounts, him and Nick Saban got along very well, and he didn't really hold any ill will towards Nick Saban even after he benched him in that national title game. But Lincoln Riley is a player's coach. The biggest thing with Lincoln Riley is going to be seeing how Jalen Hurts fits into his system. This is going to be the biggest, I won't say test of Lincoln Riley, but the biggest. We'll find out more about Lincoln Riley's coaching ability with this situation than we have in the past, because Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray were both outstanding throwing quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts doesn't have quite the arm that those 2 have. Is still really good, can run, is a bigger guy, a little bit bigger than both those guys. But it'll be interesting to see how Hurts' skill set fits within Lincoln Riley's offense.
All right, as I mentioned, Chesapeake Energy Arena last night saw the Lakers come to town and play the Thunder, and the Thunder are starting to lose some games.
Yeah, they've lost 5 out of 6, and last night lost to a LeBron James-less Lakers. So you come in thinking should be a win for the Thunder, but their defense has been their biggest bugaboo over these 5 games that they lost in 6. They're allowing right under 46% in 3-point shooting to opponents, and that's been a problem for them over the past couple of years.
Perimeter defense.
But the first half of this year, defensively, they've looked fantastic. And Billy Donovan admitted last night that it might be his fault because their offense had kind of slipped a little bit, and so he told the team that they needed to be better on offense, which last night, by all accounts, they were. They hit a bunch of 3-pointers, which is not their game, frankly. And it actually kind of hurt them because they hit a bunch of 3-pointers during regulation, come out in overtime and miss the first 5, I think.
They really wanted Ferguson to keep going in overtime.
Yeah, and so that didn't happen. And by that point, their defense had become a sieve, and guys from the Lakers are getting layups and
Lonzo
putbacks.
Ball looks like an all-star.
Yeah, which should not be the case.
No.
So it's been a defensive issue for the Thunder over the last 5 games. Now they did get Nerlens Noel back. Alex Abrines looks like he's kind of working his way back into that rotation. So it'd be interesting to see kind of where they go from here. They have a weird ability if the offense is lagging, they kind of flip a switch and all of a sudden the offense gets a little better, but then the defense goes down. So now it'd be interesting to see if they can get the defensive intensity back up, and maybe they lose some on offense, but I think they'd settle for that.
And they have a weird schedule coming up. They have afternoon games on Saturday and then MLK Day on Monday. I believe that's like a noon or 11:30 our time against the Knicks.
Yeah, that's a traditional game, and they've always played, as far as I can remember, they've always played an MLK Day game, and those are typically during the day. A lot of teams will have like school days where they'll invite school kids to come to the games. New York might be a little different. They played the Wizards a couple years ago, and they had a lot of school-age kids that came to that game. The New York game will be interesting because it'll be our first go-around with Dennis Kanter in a while, who's been in the news lately with his ongoing issues with his native turkey. So we'll get a chance to talk to him about all that, so that'll be fun.
All right, good stuff. One last thing. Oklahoma State basketball released 3 players this week.
They did. 2 bench guys and a starter, Michael Weathers, who had actually just worked his way back into the lineup. He had been in trouble a bit earlier this year. Mike Boynton doesn't seem to put up with a whole lot. He's had some guys that were suspended earlier this year that took a while to work their way back onto the team, and this was pretty immediate. I think what had happened first couple of days of January. Kicks 3 guys off the team, and it really puts them in a bind because all of a sudden now they have 8 scholarship players and 1 walk-on, and that's all they have on their roster. Playing Big 12 basketball with 9 guys and you can't even practice against each other is a challenge. So on Thursday, Boynton opened up and had open tryouts, looking for anybody from the OSU student body that could maybe post up and take a couple of rebounds, take a couple of charges during practice.
And this is not unprecedented at OSU.
It's not. They've done it a couple of times. If you remember, R.W. McQuarters, Alonzo Mays played, and those guys contributed quite a bit to that team. More recently, Adarius Bowman, I think in 07 maybe, came off the football squad and played. I think he only played in 3 or 4 games, but was pretty vital in practice for a team that was pretty good. And I think he only scored maybe 3 or 4 points that year, but not unprecedented at OSU for them to pull guys either from other sports or from the student body to help them out. I think a few years ago, even the women's basketball team, and the same thing happens in Norman, they'll have a group of men's players from campus come and be kind of a practice squad for them to practice against. So they've done this before. It'll be interesting to see kind of who suits up this weekend for them and who they've got on practice.
It's a team that's 8-9 overall, I believe, but there's a lot of teams in the Big 12 that are likely to make the postseason.
There are. I don't know if OSU's one of those. They've got a tough second half of their season, and now you're playing with, like I said, 8 scholarship players. It just gets awful difficult. Now the good thing is they've got a good recruiting class coming in, and then all of a sudden you've got another couple of scholarships that are available, so you can go out and get a couple more guys that may be more in line with Boynton's style of play, guys that he wants on his roster. So they've got some opportunity to kind of shore up some of this over the next year or so.
Very good. Plenty of sports coverage can be found over the weekend in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com, coverage of those various games. Ben, I'll toss it back to you. I'll let you kind of set up your weekend coverage as well as Political State.
Yeah, so taping this week's episode of Political State, Justin Wingard and I will be in the studio this afternoon. And then on Sunday, I have a story kind of taking a closer look at Governor Stitt's first week in office. Like I said earlier, his big focus is on the budget. Another important part of the financial picture for the state this year is that lawmakers are expected to have a little bit over $600 million in extra money. I mean, oil prices right now remain below where last year's estimates were at, but lawmakers are optimistic they're going to have that extra money. Stitt has said that priorities for him included another teacher pay raise, which will cost at least $50 million, if not more. You know, he wants to put some more money into the state's rainy day fund, which is at about $500 million right now. At some point in his administration, he wants to see it get to $2 billion. He's not going to be able to do that this year for a variety of reasons, but he wants to put a substantial amount back into the state savings account. And then his budget director is studying the fact that they've got $200 million in new bills due, so to speak, because of tax breaks and contracts already signed. So that $600 million sounds like a lot when you've been looking at the budget deficits of recent years, but that pie goes away really quickly, and that's not to mention the other state agencies that are asking for more money to make up for years of cuts.
All right, good stuff. That coverage can be found this weekend in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com, but I would be remiss, in the spirit of Philip O'Connor, if I did not get you guys' prediction of what will happen Sunday in the NFL and your Chiefs.
Oh man, Chiefs. I think they're optimistic. Last week I was terrified. I'm kind of optimistic.
How cold is it supposed to be?
It's warming up. It's not as cold as it was supposed to. It was
You
going
were
to
there.
be. I was there last week.
Yeah.
It wasn't as cold as it was supposed to be this Sunday, but maybe a little bit of snow. But I mean, it looks good in the snow and the cold last week, and I mean, you know, everybody feels like the defense is fixed now after, you know, shutting down the Raiders, which wasn't that impressive, but then shutting down the Colts, and which kind of is. So I don't know. I mean, the good news is you got a young quarterback. If he can't make it past this hump, the future hopefully is bright. You know, don't want to. Obviously, that wasn't the case for some people like
They've
Dan
got a
Marino,
whole lot of
but,
people rooting for him.
That's a good
true.
part. You take
Yeah.
on the Patriots in the
Yeah.
AFC Championship game, especially you haven't been, you know, at this point in a long time. A nation roots for you.
Suddenly Tom Brady saying, oh, nobody thinks we're any good. Come
You're
on.
the Patriots.
Yeah.
Yeah, just all the reason to hate him more.
All right, we're done. Paige is giving me the wrap back there behind the wall. Again, these stories and plenty more coverage over the weekend in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com. Guys, thanks for your time.
Thanks,